and welcome to the weekly rushes, a rush through the weekly rushes, your one-stop shop for movie and streaming news. That's my stomach rumbling with anticipation and digesting a rather wonderful breakfast that I've just had. Obviously, the biggest news story of the week, still overwhelming all the column inches everywhere, is the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. If you haven't been following it, do drop in on some of the episodes or some of the lives that I've been doing following the court case, Johnny Depp's defamation court case against Amber Heard, or as some people are calling it, the defecation court case, for obvious reasons. Teacup Yorkies, they don't do big grumpies, but they, you never know. Anyway, so let's crack on with some of the other stories this week. As ever, there's a heady mix of casting news, new projects that have been announced, new films being made, and also controversies surrounding certain performers, actors, off-screen antics, and all such like. And one of the first stories I'm going to deal with is something that's been in the press over the last couple of days, which is the Dave Chappelle story. Dave Chappelle, the comedian, has a series on Netflix. He was attacked whilst on stage during the Netflix Is a Joke festival. This was on May 3rd, and someone in the audience ran on stage, a chap called Isaiah Lee. He was in possession of a weapon. He's been charged. He was taken down to the Los Angeles police. Interestingly, and this hasn't really hit the press too much, Chris Rock revealed some of his own experiences, or his take on some of his own experiences with Will Smith slapping him, the famous Will Smith slap. During a separate sort of private secret show in LA's Comedy Store, Chappelle went on stage and was there with Chris Rock. Chris Rock was sharing the stage with him, and Dave Chappelle said to Chris Rock this: "At least you got smacked by someone of repute. I got smacked by a homeless guy with leaves in his hair." Okay, not a particularly nice or PC way of describing the guy who's clearly got mental health issues, but it incidentally still shouldn't have charged the stage. We talked about this earlier this week on Coffee Moaning. Let's hope to God that what happened with Chris Rock hasn't been a green light for people to essentially feel they can charge onto stage with anything they don't like and mete out their own justice, because that would just be ghastly, wouldn't it? In saying this to Chris Rock responded with this. I think this might be the first thing he's actually said. He said, "Yeah, I got smacked by the softest N-word that ever rapped." A little bit of a dig there, a little bit of a dig at the softest man to have ever rapped. So again, that connection between the Dave Chappelle story, the Chris Rock story, it's refusing to kind of go away. It's kind of gone deep into the Hollywood community, into the sort of comedy circuit, into the kind of showbiz community of Hollywood, and it's refusing to go away. And which leads me to the second story that I wanted to talk about, which is Will Smith. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about how Will Smith is losing lots of gigs. A couple of gigs have gone away from Netflix. Bidding wars for his memoirs seem to have sort of faded away, and Apple and Netflix, they've all sort of stepped back from possibly going for it. He has a big film in development, or he's shot a big film called Emancipation, which is directed by Antoine Fuqua. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He directed Training Day. It's the story of a runaway slave who tries to essentially escape his plantation owners, and I think this is being made for Apple, and there's a huge hope or expectation that this was going to be Apple TV's sort of major Oscar candidate for 2022. So, for next year rather, 2023. Well, obviously, what with the Will Smith slap and everything, probably the Oscar ceremony immediately after the slap ceremony isn't going to be the greatest time for Will Smith's epic, Oscar-worthy movie, Emancipation, hitting the screens. They've said that it's going to be pushed back. They've said that they're going to release it sometime in 2023, which means it would then be eligible potentially for the 2024 Oscars. And they're kind of saying that Fuqua is in edit and it's taking him longer and he's pushing back the edit. I personally think they're going slow here. I personally think they're treading water to get a little bit of kind of distance, a bit of blue water between the incident and his potential. I mean, we'll be in the curious situation though, where he could be nominated for an Oscar. He could possibly even win another Oscar, but he won't be there or allowed to collect it. This is a curious story. Liam Neeson, I don't know if you remember, Liam Neeson got caught up in a racist comments kind of drama several years ago when he was talking about the experiences of a friend of his who I believe knew someone or was someone who'd been raped and were incidentally raped by a black person, and it made him want to go out and kill or injure or hurt the first black person he met. Liam Neeson was very much on the receiving end of cancel culture, sort of saying, how can you say this stuff? In his defense, he was saying this was an unrehabilitated or unreformed young Liam Neeson. You know, he didn't feel it now, but the fact that he told the story and didn't comment on a problem with the story kind of led to all sorts of kind of trouble and what have you. Well, the music series, the series Atlanta, that was launched the careers of, well, not launched, but featured Childish Gambino, Brian Tyree Henry as well, who can be seen in The Eternals and various other movies. Liam Neeson's got a cameo in this, and I really want to see this. It sounds kind of cool. And I think this is a really clever way to restore, resurrect, and perhaps, you know, repair damage caused by a potential cancellation event. In this episode of Atlanta, he can be found, Liam Neeson is found as Liam Neeson in a club called, or a bar called, the Cancel Club. Brian Tyree Henry is the character that sits alongside him, and they talk about Liam Neeson's transgression. Liam Neeson says to this character, says to Brian Tyree Henry, you might have heard or read about my transgression, you know, what I said about what I wanted to do to a black guy, any black guy, when I was a younger man. And he says, I look back, man, it honestly frightens me. I thought people knowing who I once was would make clear who I am and who I've become. So sort of explaining again. But with all that being said, I'm sorry, I apologise if I hurt people. And Brian Tyree Henry comes back at him rather wittily, saying, well, between me and you, I still fuck with Taken, and both men laugh, i.e. I still love your movie Taken. It's good to know you don't hate black people, says Tyree Henry's character. But at the end, as he's leaving, Liam Neeson says, what? No, I can't stand the lot of you. Now I feel that way because you tried to ruin my career. Didn't succeed, mind you. I'm sure one day I'll get over it, but until then, we are mortal enemies. He also then goes on to add, I learned that the best and worst part about being white is you don't have to learn anything if you don't want to. Very meta, very clever, very sort of self-referential, very sort of throwing yourself under the bus in a sense yet again, and actually showing through delivering the scene and understanding the scene that he has comprehended the insensitivities of the original statement and the ways in which he needed to make amends. And I don't know why. There's something about this that I like. I like the way he's been given the opportunity to say it. I like the fact that there wasn't a preciousness within the creative team at Atlanta to not tackle this and deal with it in some way. And at the same time, it doesn't sanction the original kind of opinion or stance. So what do you think? I think that's a really innovative way of dealing with a kind of cancel culture like transgression. Talking of which, God, we're big on the segues today. You may have heard last week, Bill Murray, they've put a pause on his shoot, obviously due to allegedly sort of inappropriate behaviour. He's suggesting it's an age thing, it's a generational thing. And in talking about that story, I also referenced the fact that Frank Langella, the sort of, you know, the screen and stage legend of Hollywood and New York, Frank Langella has been fired from Netflix's series, The Fall of the House of Usher. He was cancelled, and what he's been cancelled for, or what he's been removed for, what he was fired for, were three potential things, which he runs through. He's put a sort of op-ed piece out almost. He's kind of posted or made a statement talking about what experience he's gone through and what actually happened. By all accounts, he was told he told an off-colour joke. 2, he sometimes called another actress baby or honey. And 3, he'd give me a hug or touch my shoulder in a way that obviously didn't feel right. It pivots around a love scene they were making, and they had intimacy sort of handlers or intimacy coaches had talked them through, and what happens now on sets to avoid any of the kind of untoward possibilities of within these intimate scenes of things going astray or getting out of control, is that with an intimacy coach, they'll go through every single part of a love scene or a love-making scene. And he says in his defense that whilst they were shooting the love scene, the director called cut, and the actress allegedly said, he touched my leg. That was not in the blocking. The blocking being where you've kind of blocked out every move, every position, every look, every sort of setup in the shot for cameras, for position, for where you're going to be, where your hand needs to be if there's a cut and all that kind of stuff. When the director called cut, the actress said, he touched my leg. And he says she turned, walked off the set, followed by the director and the intimacy coordinator. He tried to follow to give her some space. And his feeling, Frank Langella, is that where he was told to put his hand at that moment in performing the scene didn't feel right, didn't feel natural. He said, in defense, this is absurd. I did, and I still think that where I put my hand wasn't right. It was a love scene on camera, and he feels that legislating the placement of hands is ludicrous, undermines instinct and spontaneity within the scene. Again, you're kind of slightly looking here at yet another generational divide, another generational sort of collision but based upon sort of acting practice. You know, he's obviously older, he's obviously had scenes where he could just do whatever he wanted, and whereas now there are far more rules and regulations, I think correctly so, because it's a professional job that you're having to do. You know, I mean, let's just think of the recent terrible story of James Franco essentially luring young actresses into his acting school in order to practice and try out nude, often nude and very intimate sex scenes. He describes the way he's been treated as the real definition of unacceptable behaviour, and he feels that it's going to impact on all his future earnings and his ability to work as an actor. What do you think? Getting on to some of the new projects that are underway, as the Cannes Film Festival nears and is about to launch the movie screening aspect of the Cannes Film Festival. Of course, there's the huge marketplace of all sorts of projects that are being pitched, are being put together, are being constructed, deals are being brokered, you know, checks are being signed, they're breaking necks and writing checks behind the scenes all the time. Michael Keaton, who's getting all sorts of plaudits for his part in Dope Sick. We started watching it. He, for me, was the best thing in it. There was something about it that didn't quite gel, though I should maybe go back to it. He's to star in and direct in a new film noir-like thriller, so a moody thriller, called Knox, as in K-N-O-X. Knox Goes Away. And this sounds really quite intriguing. I'm going to read you the blurb for it because I've always thought that there must be something in it. I remember my nan saying, if I knew I only had a year to live with a terminal illness, I'd like to go out into the world and in vigilante sort of fashion, eliminate paedophiles all over the world. The idea being, I've got a finite amount of time left, what have I got to lose? This film, I'll read you the blurb. The film follows a contract killer who, after being diagnosed with a fast-moving form of dementia, is presented with an opportunity to redeem himself by saving the life of his estranged adult son. But to do so, he must race against the police closing in on him, as well as the ticking clock of his own rapidly deteriorating mind. That line, the ticking clock of his own rapidly deteriorating mind. That, for me, if I had that pitched to me, that's the line that made me go, I want it, and I want it now. Because confusion will creep in. There's going to be an increasing sense, a real opportunity for him as an actor to interiorize and manifest that confusion and disorientation, whilst also knowing he's on a mission. I think that sounds like a really, really rich new project. In the same breath, a new project starring Michelle Pfeiffer, for me, the original and really the only Catwoman. I can't tell you how many crushes I had on Michelle Pfeiffer. Michelle Pfeiffer, was it Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Liaisons? I believe it was. Oh my God, she's just, love her. Anyway, 3-time Oscar nominee, Michelle Pfeiffer. She's currently starring in as Betty Ford in the series The First Lady, is to star in a new film called Wild 4 O'Clocks. She's playing, I believe, a grandmother. This is the directorial debut of the guy, Peter Craig, who wrote The Batman and has also worked on the new soon-to-be-released Top Gun Maverick. The story, Wild 4 O'Clocks, follows two young brothers who, after their father sent to prison, are placed in the care of their estranged grandmother, thus Michelle Pfeiffer, playing to age. This is going to be good. I mean, the most glamorous grandmother you could possibly ever dream to have, who plays a vibrant and larger-than-life woman who will quickly have to learn how to care for the heartbroken yet strong-willed boys. This, as I say, launches Peter Craig's directorial career. He's also worked on The Unforgivable, starring Sandra Bullock. He also worked on the scripts for The Hunger Games, Mockingjay, parts 1 and 2, and he's also working on the script for the forthcoming sequel to Gladiator, Ridley Scott's Gladiator. I think this will be rich. Again, it's another little kind of movie package that I think is going to, I think Michelle Pfeiffer needs another role. We want Michelle Pfeiffer back in our common sort of Hollywood verbal currency. Another project that's kind of just been mentioned, and we haven't got much detail on it, but the reason I wanted to mention this is Adam Sandler. Why does Adam Sandler get such a bad press? Please, answers on an SAE, self-addressed envelope, or stamped addressed envelope. Please tell me. He recently starred in Uncut Gems, which was the brilliant, fast-paced, raw-energied kind of movie by the Safdie brothers, Benny and Josh Safdie, about a jewelry dealer in New York and all his underworld kind of wheeling and dealing and how he gets in too deep. I'm not going to ruin it. If you haven't seen Uncut Gems, check it out. It's an absolute tour de force, and I think it's a crime that Adam Sandler didn't win a bigger award than he did for that. Well, he's been talking in interview. He says that he's going to star in another movie by the twin brothers, or the two brothers, and I think that's just a brilliant prospect because they're really inventive, they're really intriguing. I believe Benny Safdie's soon to be seen. That he's an actor as well, Benny Safdie. He's soon to be seen in the Obi-Wan series. He was recently in Licorice Pizza as well. He plays the politician who you discover is gay. So the Uncut Gem's directors are looking at a new project with Adam Sandler. He refused to give details because he said he's good mates with the Safdie brothers, and he said if I said anything, they'd drag me over the hot coals for revealing anything. Sly Stallone, Sylvester Stallone. I had a very curious chance of interviewing him many years ago, very briefly at the Cannes Film Festival. Him and Robert De Niro. I think they were in a movie. Was it Cops? It might have been Cops. Sylvester Stallone, who's been bit parts in lots of things recently, bit parts in lots of TV series. He's got obviously a bit part in the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's going to start in a new mob drama for Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus, new streaming series that's going to launch in the UK, I think later this year. He's starring in a mob drama called Tulsa King. And here's a first look image of him from it. Though, as first look images go, have they not just said to him in a cafe, hey, Sly, just stand out in the middle of Fifth Avenue and let's take a photo of you? Anyway, this is being made by Taylor Sheridan. It was called Kansas City originally, and it follows the New York Mafia boss, if you like, Dwight, the General Manfredi, who's going to be played by Stallone, who, as he's released from prison after 25 years, is exiled by his boss to set up shop in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And, you know, again, there's something about Sly Stallone. I'm going to be on my own here when I say I wasn't a big fan of Rocky. I found it all a bit cringe. I wasn't a big fan of Rambo, but, you know, Sly Stallone, I think we all now have a huge fond spot for him. So perhaps this will be his moment back in the sun. I've made no secret of how much I didn't like Crazy Rich Asians, whilst also acknowledging it was an absolute sort of bellwether moment for the Asian community in terms of having a major Hollywood film made just about your community. Essentially, probably you would argue, just for your community in many regards. I mean, obviously, most of the jokes, most of the narrative, most of the kind of, you know, archetypes that will have been in there will have gone way over my head. I just found it as a film a little bit too simple, a little bit too straightforward, and a little bit too cringe. That said, there is a sequel that's in the making, though obviously it's taking a lot longer for them to get it off the ground than perhaps it's taking them to get the Crazy Rich Asians spin-off, which is going to be following, it's a spin-off about Astrid and Charlie, two of the characters, one played by Gemma Chan, Astrid played by Gemma Chan, and it's about their romance. Both this and the Crazy Rich Asians sequel that's sounds like it's a little bit further behind this project, are based on the second book in the trilogy of books that were written by Kevin Kwan called China Rich Girlfriend. Does that excite you? And then some rather sad news this week. Well, sad, bittersweet news is Guardians of the Galaxy 3 has wrapped filming. James Gunn has been posting images on Twitter and Instagram and all over the place saying what a brilliant time it's been. And he's confirmed that this is going to be the final Guardians of the Galaxy film in the franchise. And I was just thinking as I thought, right, they're going to stop it. There's been a sort of 6-year, I think, hiatus between Guardians 2 and Guardians 3. We've often talked about it. It pivoted around the fact that James Gunn, the director, due to historic tweets, jokes, inappropriate jokes about paedophiles, was fired by Disney. He was then picked up by DC, Warner Brothers. He directed the Suicide Squad. He's made the series Peacemaker. But he's come back. He's been forgiven. He's come back on board to make the third Guardians of the Galaxy. And it's always struck me that for my kids' generation, certainly my younger kids, Maddie and Kiki, Guardians of the Galaxy is going to be very much, I think, is very much their generation's Star Wars. And it shows you how much we've come on in the way of a sense of humour. But if you think about it, the kind of humour that was parked within Han Solo in Star Wars is kind of writ large across all the characters in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's proper top-drawer space opera stuff. It's camp, it's silly, it's colourful. People have split, you know, their kind of morals are kind of all over the place. Everyone's out for themselves. They're all bounty hunters, essentially. So there's no real clear sense of good versus evil. They're all just surviving. And in the same way, I wonder whether what made the original Star Wars films so successful, I think, were these, at the time, in sort of, you know, big periods of 4 to 5 years between the original 3 films. And I think, you know, that led to the ability for us to really imagine what these characters were doing, build our own narratives. It became more mythical. We'd be thinking about them a lot more. We'd be fictionalizing what was happening in their characters' lives and what have you. And I think in a weird way, the whole kind of, you know, James Gunn tweet episode has enforced that gap on this. So I think Guardians of the Galaxy will have this same sort of specialized, rarefied place within the minds of and imaginations of the younger generations that are around at the moment. They've even gone to the lengths of shooting a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, which is obviously a riff on the appalling version or holiday special, Christmas holiday special, was it, they did, of Star Wars that was risible, and that there are sort of the VHS copies of in certain places that you can watch. Diabolical. But yeah, James Gunn has wrapped on the movie, and I think the characters are going to be bleeding out into possible other spin-offs of their own. I do believe Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is parked after whatever happens to the Guardians in the new Thor Love and Thunder film. So still more to look forward to from all the characters, but I think in the form that they're in, and I think it's always good to end on a bang. We're going to have 3 strong Guardians films that we always cherish. Which brings us to films of the week, though I have to confess this week it's more like film of the week. We have one major release release, and of course it's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and review will be landing of that film shortly. Curious to note, Doctor Strange, the original film, we weren't particularly excited about seeing, and it was an absolute crowd pleaser. We were pleasantly surprised. It's a sophisticated mix of kind of magic, mysticism, hallucination, mindfulness even, and sort of, at times a sort of martial arts aspect to it. We quite like that. And Benedict Cumberbatch obviously is the star. And this one also stars Elizabeth Olsen in there as WandaVision / the Scarlet Witch. And so, as I say, we've seen it. I'll give you some insight. It's done extraordinarily well at the box office in America, taking in $85 million on its Friday night alone, making it the 8th largest of all-time opening days ever in America, sitting just behind Rise of Skywalker. So a massive hit. There's a real appetite out there for these kind of fictional superhero kind of franchise things. Interesting story arc for Elizabeth Olsen's character. It's as much Elizabeth Olsen's film as it is Benedict Cumberbatch's. It's directed by Sam Raimi, who obviously years ago did The Evil Dead. He did 1 or 2 of the Spider-Man films, the original Spider-Man films. And so there's aspects of real horror in this, which has caused some Marvel sort of, Marvel loyals to kind of balk at the idea that you can mess with the Marvel kind of concept. But I think a bit of horror is probably a good thing. It was the one aspect I liked of the Morbius film was the sort of vampiric horror stuff. So Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is your main release this week. If you don't fancy anything vaguely approaching a superhero film, I did manage to check out earlier this week a film called The Playground, which was Belgium's answer for the Best Foreign Picture Oscar. And I have to say, it's an incredibly moving. I did do it as a film of the week a couple of weeks ago. It's well worth your time. It's only 72 minutes long, and astonishing performance by a young girl at the centre of it. Go and check it out. It's about bullying, it's about the playground, and it's all kept at a child's point of view. So 2 films of the week there, but really there's only one big release. And there you have this week's Weekly Rushes, a rushed rush through all the streaming and movie news this week. Tell us your thoughts on the stories, and I hope you have a fun film-packed weekend.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.